Hello and welcome to another Sharpe special. Today we're looking at Sharpe Sword and we're very, very excited. Jason is here as ever. Hey Jason.
Hello there.
Wearing your costume or a reenactment of your costume?
This is a reenactment of Harris's intellectual wear, where he gets stuck into Candide and saves the whole episode. In fact, saves the whole war by breaking the code. Do I get the credit? Fuck no. But yes, this
You've
is
got
my...
the line, so stop whining, because usually
okay, yes.
you get the lines either.
Yes, this is my Harris breaks the code costume.
Oh, excellent. We also have Hugh Ross back with us. Hugh, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Good. How is war on the authorities over the over 70s thing going?
It's heating up. Everybody's trying to get their voices heard. Equity have been quite good about it.
Outstanding. This is, of course, the nonsense that means no one over 70 can get insured to act anymore, and we're just going to replace them all with young people wearing makeup, which is shit and rubbish. Yes, Zack's done a hand gesture that I think speaks for all of us. But again, we will resend the petition around for you as well, Hugh, so everybody can find out about that. We have. I'm gonna fess up how and say that this man is one of my teenage crushes. James Purefoy is with us. Hello, James.
Oh, bless you. That's very kind.
Seriously, I was like, while everybody else was obsessing over Heath Ledger in A Knight's Tale, I was like, no, I was not having it. I was like, no, he's nothing. He's nothing. But I do have to say, although one of my teenage crushes is here and I'm slightly excited, it pales in comparison to the excitement that I feel when I see Cocky's grinning face on a podcast. Cocky!
Well, very kind of you. I don't think I compete with James, however, but there we are.
You do. Marcus and I don't know if you know this, because we will tell anyone that will listen that Marcus and I have decided that the only thing we want from life, our one bucket list item now, is to go out drinking with you.
We'll buy the drinks if our pockets are deep enough, Cocky.
Yeah, well, they'll have to be.
Okay. I'll take a loan out for you.
That's very good of you.
I would recommend...
You can't get it with my fucking bag.
Can I come too? I'd really like to come as well.
You're more of course.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the same. Would not be the same. We also have with us John Kavanagh. Hi, John.
Hey, Alex. Hi.
How are you doing this year?
Fair enough like everyone else, but I mean, I haven't really bbeen working away, you know. Was up with the last duel up in France with, I'm driving. Been busy. Done on too long now. I mean, I don't know. Jesus, I don't know.
Yeah, let's reminisce about a time where there were pubs and we could hang out and like hug people, without fear of death. And where you were allowed to work without the government telling you that you were old and no longer useful to society. So we're going to talk about Sharpe Sword. We also have with us today, we have, of course, our historical nerds with us as well. We have Zack White with us. You right, Zack?
You're right, Alex.
He's actually put on a shirt with a collar for this.
Making an effort. Cocky's here.
Yeah. And Marcus is here. Hi, Marcus.
Hi, very good, thanks. I can just about hear Fisherman's Friends playing for my girlfriend downstairs, by the way, so that's the distraction.
I'm sorry.
And we have also with us Matt Bone. How are you, Matt?
I'm very well, properly geeking out today, again.
And we also have a chum of Hughes with us as well, Peter. Hi, Peter.
Hi there. Also geeking out, actually. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so I guess we'll do what we've started doing, and it works, because for people who are coming to this more from the history side and less from the TV side, Marcus is just going to put Sharpe Sword into context for us, aren't you?
Yes, going to try to. So Sharpe Sword's a really nice one that it does follow the book a lot, but also diverges and makes it its own genre within itself. So in the books, it's following Wellington's brilliant victory at Salamanca, his famous victory in 45 minutes, crossing the plains, finding an opportunity and winning. It's one of my examples that I always use. Brilliant battle. But weaving through in, I think, with Always Be Sharpe, the budget might not have fitted that. It takes it a bit later into the story towards the edge of France, and it weaves in, that's in the books, a really nice story of spy and espionage, which feeds into the wider guerrilla and intelligence network that Wellington had built up. And within that, we end up with spies and counter-spies and traitors and a theme of honour going through. They remove some characters and add in extras. They make some, like Jack Spears, a bit more sympathetic, whereas in the books he's a bit more of a rogue, perhaps. And we end up with an element of surprises, of Irishmen who fought against Nelson suddenly on Wellington's side, with brilliant lines of John Bull's a bad neighbour, but Boney's a bully. And then we end up with a sword fight with Simerson at the end, being kicks, running and screaming at the battle. It ends up, between the books and the film, having some unusual elements for historical action adventure. We end up diving not only into honour and spies, but we end up diving into medicine. I think Bernard Cornwell wrote it's one of the strangest bits of research he was having to do was go to, I think, St. Bart's or at least London surgeons and learn about infections, and we bring in all of that element. And then his sword himself, because unfortunately Sean Bean loses his sword. This one I'm holding in my hand for the people who can't listen to the podcast. Yeah, I bought it. Sean Bean loses his sword, gets broken, and it gets recrafted from a French cuirassier sword. So there's a bit of blacksmith in there, and this is for anyone listening. That's a original I've got of a French cuirassier sword. It's a really nice moment. It's quite poignant that Harper reforges a sword as a symbol of hope to bring his best friend back, but also an officer should have a sword. So that's where the sword element comes in. And in the films, we end up with a very large battle, a duel, and a sense of redeeming himself from a turncoat spy. So that's Sharpe's sword for us.
Have you admitted to your girlfriend how much that sword cost yet?
No. Short answer.
If I just jotted down some notes from when I read the book. I always do that. And in the book, we have Hogan and Leroy. They appear. In fact, Leroy gets killed in this book. They mention very briefly a chap called Captain Scoville, and he was the British Army's code breaker. So I guess that was what they took, and they made my story and ran with that.
Scoville, historically, really interesting. He's the one who does crack Napoleon's code. It's like the easiest way to think of it is like early Enigma. So they're sending some messages uncoded all across Spain and the Iberian Peninsula, and some of them are coded, and they've got these code books. And Scoville's on the staff, and he's got a head for numbers. He's gone to actually a military academy. He's trained as being an officer, which is a little bit on the unusual. And he brings it all together. He cracks the code. There's a brilliant book by Mark Urban just on him that I recommend for people interested. Bit nerdy, but very adventurous, because with this code, we're getting French messages, and they think that even if they lose them, they're just nonsense to us. But we can actually tell where the French numbers are going to be, their strengths, their plans. So yeah, it helps shorten the war, certainly.
And lastly, a lot of scenes are faithful, especially the dying room scene, where they go in search of Sharpe, who's left for dead, and as you say, Harper brings him back and fixes the sword, and they do the famous water treatment, which John, we must talk about because that was hilarious, right? In Portugal, when the pulley system of buckets.
Yes, yeah. God, I can't remember very much about that. Really.
Okay, I'll remind you. And the last thing, which is horrible, in the book, Teresa pops up at the end. So obviously this was shot and Enemy was written afterwards or whatever, but Teresa pops up at the end of the story and helps Sharpe convalesce fully. So it's a shame we missed that. Anyway, there we go. Oh yeah, so I'd also like to say this is the episode where Stephen Moore was in, and Stephen Moore I'd known since I was a kid because I went to Holland Park Comprehensive School with his children Robin, Hedda and Guy. And I just want to say, because Stephen Moore died last December, so I just wanted to say a little tribute to Stephen. What a great guy he was, played the part really nicely. He played the part of Berkeley. It should have been the part of Wyndham, but apparently Clive Francis didn't want to do it. He said he asked for too much money, so they changed the character's name and called him Berkeley and cast Stephen Moore. Anyways, so here, tribute to Stephen Moore. And also we have Pat Lathan, who was the dying room. Yeah, he also died a couple of years ago. So just a little tribute to those guys as we start off, get all the sad stuff out of the way.
Indeed. We were talking before we came on air, and I would love for the listeners to hear this. What is it about putting Cocky and James Purefoy and John Kavanagh together that made the Russians think you would be easy to extort money out of? Because it seems like wherever you went in the former Soviet Union, you got hammered.
We sure did. Certainly in Moscow, yeah. I mean, as we were saying earlier, we had a meal in the hotel, the Novotel. We had 4 omelets, a bottle of wine, and a bottle of water, and it cost $200. It wouldn't take. Okay, that was talk about rip-off, man. It sure was. They really saw us coming.
And you got
There you go.
you a cash point, is that right?
No, Michael went across to the airport, I think, to get some money out of him.
Did I succeed? I can't remember.
You did succeed, yeah. It wasn't a very wise thing to do. I think you took a taxi. I mean, it wasn't the safest place to be knocking around, particularly at night.
John, you missed the story of the first encounter with the Novotel when they replaced Paul McGann, and we didn't know what was happening. We were all returning home, and we thought the show was over, and we all rolled up to the Novotel at about 3:30, 4 in the morning, completely knackered after waiting for 5 hours at Simferopol Airport. And our bus got pulled over, and this chappie with a sort of leather jacket and a cap came on. He tried to shake down the bus, and he was quickly told, "Listen, you don't want to shake this bus down. It's full of foreigners, la 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 la." And he quickly realized and fucked off. So yeah, Novotel and that whole area. Good thing you didn't walk out and go on your own to find Dosh Cocky.
Didn't the chap who arrived on the bus with his gun, didn't he, and that nice girl who was our sort of interpreter, blonde girl, I forgot.
Irina.
Who?
Irina Meldris.
Irina, yes. Was it Irina? Yeah. And
short blonde hair, short blonde.
Yes, and she was sort of talking rather worriedly to this chap. And then from the back of the bus, there were a lot of drunk is rather too far
actors
on the way with, "Oh, come on, darling, put your little weapon away," and all that sort of stuff, shrieking with laughter. And the fellow with the gun just couldn't cope and sort of disappeared, sort of withered away and disappeared down the steps of the bus.
And that you take on a Russian gunman with British drunken tourist behaviour, and he literally just caved and ran away.
It was a lot of camp behaviour, like security and whatnot and all that sort of stuff. I think he just got a bit frightened.
I could just less than 5 minutes to get into the adventures of Cocky. I love this.
No, it wasn't my adventure at all. I was very
Gavin was there though, so you weren't there, were you? Gav was with us, I remember, for some reason.
Yeah.
So he must have told you about that. But you don't mess with Sharpe Film. We had 6 weeks of just pillar to post crap, and we weren't going to take any more.
That's right. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, right. So we have a list of questions for people. Shall we start with James? Shall we start? Because everyone loves a baddie, don't they? And we have so many questions for James. James weeded out the first 10,000, which were just basically people going, "Oh, you're amazing and I love you," which is I'm a massive hypocrite because I've just done that.
I was going to say only 9,000 of those from Alex.
Exactly. Right. Okay. It was the suit of armour, man. I think there was a suit of armour involved, and I was very young and hormonal. Okay, lots of Rome and Solomon Kane questions saying how wonderful you were, but this is a Sharpe podcast, so let's stick to this. Virginia Donaldson says, "James, the big reason why I watched the Sharpe series, I knew if he was in it, it was bound to be good." She says, "You made a great statement years later that having a boring history teacher should be made a criminal offence." So she says, to that end, do you prefer acting in historical films or modern?
Oh, you can't really say that, can you? Because it's that's a sort of genre thing where, I mean, there are plenty of terrible historical films, and there are plenty of terrible modern films. It always comes down to a script. It doesn't really matter, does it? It's always about whether the script is any good and the people involved are good, and and is the money any good? That's finally when you have as many fucking children as I do, then you need to make sure that they're being covered. So, I like doing historical films. I mean, I just like working. I like being on movie sets and TV sets. I like crews. I like actors. I like the bants.
Yeah.
It's fun, isn't it? I mean, it's a hell of a lot better than a proper job.
Hell yeah. No, we don't do nobody on this podcast does 9 to 5. No way.
No.
Lots of people have asked about your pretty heroic demise for a traitor in Sharpe Sword. Do you think you deserve such a death scene?
Well, I mean, I'd written this backstory for him because there wasn't much explanation as to why he'd lost his arm, I don't think, in the book. I think they just chopped it off. But I decided that what was the French chap's name? LaRue, exactly. I decided LaRue had put his hand, starting at his fingers, into a meat slicer, and then had just taken very thin slices, all the way up to his shoulder. And I think, if you imagine something like that happening to somebody, imagine the level of torture that is involved, then turning French or turning French spy becomes a little bit more understandable and a little bit more, not justifiable, but I kind of understand why somebody would go, right, enough, I'll do that. Whatever you want me to do, just stop slicing my arm off. Yeah.
You know what? My co-host Alina isn't here today, but she is the grimmest, darkest person ever, and she would cringe at that backstory. That's epic. That's pretty dark to have come up with that.
I mean, I didn't try to give him a backstory to give him more sympathy, because a spy is a spy, but I think particularly his case where he was tortured into it, I kind of understand that, as opposed to doing it for money or doing it for ideological reasons,
And a lot of other questions. Drew Bale, I'll read his out because his was quite funny. It says, how hard is it to learn how to ride a horse, then ride a horse one-handed, and then ride a horse no-handed whilst waving a sword around?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about this actually when I got some of the questions through. I don't think safety issues were a terribly strong suit on the Sharpe set in the Ukraine. And I can't for the life of me imagine people getting away with now what they got away with then. I remember very specifically this, which was it was quite a tricky moment where I had to carry the flag in my right hand, but then I had no left arm, so that was bound behind me with ropes underneath my costume. So they had to put this flag, they had strapped it to me. And then there was a moment, obviously, where I had to draw my sword, and they were thinking, well, this probably is quite dangerous. So you know what they did? Was they bound my feet together underneath the horse.
I would love to see the risk assessment for this.
Which cannot be right, can it?
No.
If the horse fell over,
they literally tied my feet together, so I was tied to the horse. If anything had gone wrong, there was the explosives guy, and of course you all guys all know this, but some of the people watching it, don't know that I didn't know when I went to the Ukraine that the word Bolshoi just meant big. So it's Bolshoi ballet is just big ballet. And I asked the guy, I said, so the explosions that are going on around me, what have we got? And he just went, Malinki, Bolshoi, Bolshoi, Malinki, Bolshoi, Bolshoi, Malinki, Bolshoi. Malinki being small and Bolshoi being big. So these explosions, these squibs, which were going off around the horse, left, right and centre. And then having to go at a fair old clip across this ground with my feet tied to the horse underneath. Yeah, that's not something you'd want to repeat.
No, I love the bit. There's a question in all the risk assessments in there where you have to say, what's the worst that could happen if I do this? I'd love to have seen what they put in that box.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could easily have just gone over
the
horse and underneath the horse.
Underside of horse as it rides over Bolshoi explosion.
Yes, quite.
Yeah, brilliant. Also, as well, someone wanted to know, this is Gary Fowler, who often asks questions on these. Did it stand you in good stead for your role as Edward Teach?
Gosh, I wonder why that would be. They're two very, very different men. I think what it did do, I mean, in terms of the horse riding, you spend a lot of time, if you're that kind of actor during your 30s, you do spend a lot of time on a horse with a sword welded to your hand, don't you? That's kind of, I have a career which started off in white blouson shirts and breeches and long boots in period dramas. And then in my 30s, I was welded to a sword and a horse. And my 40s, I played billionaires and psychopaths. And my 50s, I think I'm just playing spies again. So it's all gone full circle.
Well, Gary thinks you should be James Bond.
Yeah, a little bit long in the tooth for that now, love. I
He
think.
says, well, he's got a contingency because he thinks you'd make a great M.
Ah, okay, that would be good. I think
Gary,
that.
your agent.
Well, I think isn't Mr. Fines playing M now? I think he might get a bit pissed. That's probably his retirement fee.
Brilliant.
Dent was M.
He's dead now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I'll try and keep up.
Yeah, no, Ray Fiennes is now M.
Yeah.
And that's probably his pension for his old age.
Spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Skyfall.
Indeed.
Yeah, spoilers.
Yeah, sorry, spoiler alert. Oops.
Well, you've had enough time to watch it now, haven't you, really? It's got no one to tell but yourself. There's lots of stuff kind of that people just have got so much they want to ask you, not necessarily about Sharpe. There's lots of questions about sort of the adversity of having the one arm on it, and someone wanted to know, where did you put your arm? Was it tied to your side or?
No, it was tied to my back.
Oh, okay.
So it was tied behind me and tied up all underneath all the costume, and then you put the costume on top of that.
Ah, because Kenny Bonnet was very concerned about where your arm actually was.
Yeah, well, that's where it was, behind me. I think we chose, it sort of depended. If I was being shot from the front, it would be behind. If I was being shot from the side, it would be down the side. It would all depend where the camera was. So it moved depending on what the shot was.
Because, I guess now, do they just CGI off limbs if they need to?
I suspect they do exactly that, yeah.
It's not in the Sharpe budget, was it?
Lop it off with software.
Yeah. Do you feel, Bjarke Fraser wants to know, this is quite funny because you've just sort of described decade by decade your career. Do you feel like you've got a bad guy face?
I don't not. I think I've probably got a good guy face that turns bad.
Yeah. No, I see that, yeah.
I think that often I get cast as the person that you think, oh, he's not going to be him. Look at his smile. He's not going to be a bad guy. And then he turns out to be a bad guy.
Quintessential British bad guy as well.
Yes.
Elite few that carry that off. Laird wanted to know, why is there no chance of a Solomon Kane follow-up?
I think there's always a chance. There's always a chance. I mean, it's a difficult thing because the rights of those kind of things are always tricky to get hold of. And yeah, actually, funnily enough, I was using lockdown to work my way through that.
Oh. So you're prepping for the role, basically.
Which is the entire the collected works of Solomon Kane. I don't know, it might be worth having a little look at to see. There I am on a horse. Look at that. It might be worth looking through to see if there are any stories that could be brought in and made to. But I think I was inspired to do it. I found out a couple of weeks ago that the 8th most watched movie in Netflix on a certain day a couple of weeks ago, 8th most watched movie in the whole world was Solomon Kane.
Boom.
So when I heard that, I thought, well, maybe there's a market for it. That could be interesting.
Well, seeing as Ray Fiennes has stolen that retirement gig on Bond, then maybe
exactly. Yeah.
Stand it.
James, I remember when I first walked into the dressing room, when I first saw you there, you were carving an oak burr.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
Look. Hey, how weird you should say that, Jez.
Cool. I was hoping that might happen.
Because here it is.
Oh, yes.
And I turned it into a box.
Oh, cool.
I carved out the middle of it, and here it is. It is an oak burr.
And that was the one you were carving on Sharpe, on sword, yeah?
The very same.
Fantastic. So you didn't often do that, or that was something you do all the time?
Yeah, no, it's something I often will do. I used to make weapons, like bows and arrows and swords and things like that for my kid, because I've got a 24-year-old boy. One of the boys is 24, and when he was young, I used to make him stuff when I was hanging around on set. Yeah.
Our son is 25. Natasha was pregnant during Sword while she was on set.
Right.
So.
Indeed,
yeah. And he might be moving back in.
What was your favourite thing about playing Spears?
I tell you, I really liked going to the Ukraine. I liked working with all those people. They were just good people. Beanie, the rest of you, all of that, I thought, and it was such an incredible, unusual adventure. And I'd arrived there, I think maybe 4 months after it had started that season. And so everybody was a little jaded by the time I arrived. But the first thing I saw when I came up onto the corridor with all the rooms in that, and I used the word hotel very loosely, the first thing I saw was people racing cockroaches down a corridor.
Yes, that's very good.
Very, very plausible.
Very plausible. There were a whole bunch of planks of wood laid down, like 5 or 6 lanes. And I came around a corner and people were throwing money down on which cockroach was going to get to the end first.
Year 3 was the year of the serious cockroach infestation. So, James, this is a picture of the Orlinia Cultural Centre where I first met you, where you were carving that burr. That's where that is. Natasha and I went back there in 2011. Yeah. Or
did you?
I went back to that cultural centre. They wouldn't let me in. I worked. I just want to take a little photo, do a bit of video. Niet.
They wouldn't let you in. That's a long way to go not to be let in, Jess.
Yeah. Well, I went to Bidar Valley, which is the little place we filmed most of Saw, just down the road from here. So I went back there to have a look at the battlefields and reminisce. That was quite a trip. So I thought I'd come here as well, but it's cool. It's part of the experience.
I have more stories about that shoot. I'm sure we all do than pretty much any other shoot I've ever been on. I mean, the idea that I ate only caviar. I think the caviar was just extraordinary. How much caviar you could buy for $20?
That whole jar, remember? The whole jar, like a kilo jar.
A whole jar, like a kilo for $20, stolen from a local caviar factory. And because the food was not of the highest order, if I remember, at the cultural centre, there seemed to be a lot of pickles, and pork knuckle, and things like that. So, and somebody, probably you, Jason, had the presence of mind to take a chip fryer over there.
Well, not a chip fryer, but a lot of us had those little mini stoves, that sandwich makers, which you could double as a grill.
But somebody did have a chip fryer, so I lived on caviar and chips for like 6 weeks, I think. And every time I now go to a shishi cocktail party, if somebody's got 3 little eggs of caviar on a Ritz cracker, I look at it and I go, it doesn't really do it for me, actually.
Well, our son was born in June of the next year. We still had that jar in the fridge. It was still going. And we would feed him little pieces of little soldiers with caviar on them. And he loved it.
Magnificent.
I just love the juxtaposition of sitting there eating from a kilo jar of caviar whilst racing cockroaches in your accommodation.
Yeah.
To carry on with that, I was going to ask Hugh and Cocky and everyone. Whenever I went to auditions after Sharpe, I would spend half the audition discussing the tales. Did you find the same thing at auditions, Michael and Hugh?
Yes, for ages afterwards, I think. Yes. I'm still shocked because I can't get over the fact that James is now older than I was when we first worked together.
No.
Which was in Bristol.
At the Bristol Old Vic.
In Hamlet. And
Indeed.
And James was giving his Laertes and I was Claudius and Ian Glenn was Hamlet. And he was you were very, very young, and now you've got how many children, James?
I have 4 children now.
4?
Yes, we have the really tricky ones are the 3-year-old twin boys that we've now got, who I can hear in the background down the hall there. But yes, they're quite a challenge.
I'm sure they are. Anyway, sorry to divert. Sorry to go off from the off message. I hear you've written a book, Jason.
Yes, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Oh, funny.
You should say that.
For James and John, who don't know, this is Salkey Bingo, because the listeners, every time he mentions his book, they drink, because he never stops mentioning it.
I see.
Hugh is the master of Salkey Bingo, of getting much in there to get them completed.
But yes, I have actually been given the release date. It's July 7th next year, and I'm actually, I've been told I have to hand back the copy edit next Monday the 7th.
Wow.
That'll be it. I can't do it anymore. It's going to go into...
And is the book a Sharpe book, or is it a... Yes.
Yeah, when I was on Sharpe, I read this book called The Recollections of Rifleman Harris. Did you ever come across it or hear about it?
Yes, I think I might have done. Yeah, go on.
Okay, because my character was based on him. My character was not in the Sharpe novels.
Right.
They wanted to have a dashing, intelligent, sexy rifleman, so they got Sean. No. So they put Harris in. Anyway, so when I read that book, I said, you know what? I'm going to Russia. It's just broken up. I'm going to be working on a movie. I'm going to be the Harris of this movie. So I kept a diary during the whole 5 years of my time.
Did you?
And 3 of those were Crimean years. And on my premise is that they really made Sharpe. The look of disease and desolation and desperation on our faces really made the look of Sharpe. So my book is called From Crimea with Love.
Very good.
James, you laugh. Brilliant. That's the way. Yeah. See, I'm writing a book. Yeah, and there was a point there I wanted to mention, but I completely forgot. There was a whole. Anyway, go on, Alex. Take it away.
Should we do John's questions?
Yes, go on.
Lots of these are about the technical aspects of your role in Sharpe. So Martin Peake would like to know, could you handle a sword beforehand, or did you have to take lessons?
A friend of mine was an expert the sword fighter. I mean, he was kind of a champion sword fighter, so I had some lessons with him. But then on the day in with the Beda Valley, wasn't it? Which is 7 kilometers from Balaclava. The guy who was in charge of the tutelage of the swords, and he was a former Olympic champion. So it was we were well served, you know.
Uldis, his name was Uldis.
Was it Uldis?
Uldis,
He
yeah.
kept, when I was told, to cut Michael on the shoulder and wherever, those vital points, he kept saying Batman. I hadn't a clue what he was talking about. It must represent some sort of Russian word or something. Batman. Huh? Bolshoi.
Malinky Bolshoi. Oh, God.
Batman. It was Batman, but whatever that meant, I don't know. But it was a fascinating whole thing.
I think what that means, Batman.
Job we were saying earlier, James. You never shake it off. The images are so vivid. I mean, even getting there was just an extraordinary adventure itself.
Yeah, tell us about the flight. That was funny when you were sharing stories about the flight.
Well, flying from Vukovar airport, I mean, we were delayed for about 7 hours, and we had a chap with us who played the saxophone, which was marvelous. But I mean, the lack of the flight, I don't think we ever wore safety belts, seat belts, or anything. Take off. It was quite extraordinary. Yeah. Coming into Simferopol that time, coming in, Michael, I remember when we shared the plane, we shared a row of seats. That the wind coming in off the Black Sea was just terrifying. So much so, I think we told Sean Bean what the sort of a landing it had been, And we said, then we were heading for Portugal. He says, no fucking way am I going. So we got the train. I think, did you get the train with him?
Yes,
James?
I didn't want to take the plane back because I was sitting in what they loosely termed the VIP seats at the back, which just simply meant a seat with a seat belt.
Oh, right.
Lucky chaps.
And obviously you had the chickens on your lap.
And then I had, on my left there was a woman who had 2 chickens, live chickens, and on my right, a woman who had this gigantic bag full of flip-flops. Must have been 500 pairs of flip-flops that she was going down to Simferopol to sell. And there was a crack in the window next to her, and every sort of 100 foot that we went up, it would go.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, are we just going to get sucked out of this fucking aeroplane or what? But yeah, I didn't want to take the plane back because I thought it was too risky, because I found out that what are they called? Aeroflot. Aeroflot don't have to pay, because it was an internal Aeroflot flight. They didn't have to pay attention to international flight, standards or federation rules or whatever. So Beanie and I think John Tams maybe took the train. And Cocky, were you on that train, Cocky?
Yeah.
Good God.
Best joke I've ever heard, I think.
Well, that was the most extraordinary train. I mean, it was 3 days, and you'd wake up, you'd go to sleep, and the telegraph poles next to you as you went across the Russian countryside, they never changed. So you'd go to sleep for 6 hours, and you'd wake up, and the view never changed, did it? And then you would go in, and you'd wake up at a station, and there'd be a woman sort of step straight out of a Brecht play, to round up with scarves, beating the window with an old dry fish to try and sell it to you.
I've got to go. This is what you missed.
And I remember that there was a cafe, or there was a catering kind of car on the train, and there were just pornographic posters all over the wall of the catering car, of the restaurant car. It was just the weirdest experience from beginning to end. And Beanie couldn't stop talking about when I get to the Novotel. When I get to Novotel, I'm eggs and chips. All he could think of and all he could talk about.
Definitely, food fantasies were a big deal. We dreamt. I mean, the third year wasn't so bad because we were going to Portugal. We knew it was going to be. But on the first year, dream of pizza or Chinese takeaway or steamed broccoli or something you couldn't get at all there.
Speaking of food, meanwhile on the aeroplane, John thought he was going to get fed, didn't you, John?
Oh yes, yeah. I said to Michael, I said, I think we're going to get a meal this time. Because I can smell garlic, but there was no sign of a meal coming. We just discovered then that it was the guy in front's armpits. That sort of a trick. That was one of those.
Horror.
And then, of course, cholera. So we didn't realise that they had cholera and TB there.
Now, this for health and safety. Look at the right-hand side here. Look, the left-hand side we were sitting on, the right-hand side was just full of boxes of shit.
This was all the cargo. This was on the way to Portugal, yeah.
This is on the way to Portugal, yeah.
The three-legged dog was a Bert running up and down.
Bertie, he didn't have 3 legs, but yeah, Bertie the dog, yeah.
I remember somebody had made a magic mushroom cake before takeoff, and I was terrified. I was going to get to the cockpit.
It did.
You're eating magic mushroom. Yeah.
I was saying in one of the podcasts, Lyndon and I used to get, a little bit, and we would stand in the aisle as the plane was landing because no one told us to buckle up. No one's, we would surf down in the aisle as it was landing, the most dangerous thing you could do ever. But we did it all the time.
Yeah.
But having said that, the pilots were very good.
Yeah, they're brilliant. A lot of them are ex-military, you see. That's why they're really good pilots. They've got to be to fly these things. But then the other big factor is, they tend to run out of fuel a lot of the time because they don't have, they don't have the gold card for refueling for starters. I think when we got to Portugal, they didn't have enough money to refuel the plane, from what I heard.
And in fact, yes, that's right. That's very common. In fact, on the first year, Colin, the props man, was saying when we arrived on year 1 into Portugal, because we did the same kind of thing, they wouldn't let us disembark until we paid $20,000 because they didn't trust Aeroflot. Aeroflot didn't have a relationship, as you said, with international travel. So someone, Malcolm, the producer, had to come out with a briefcase full of American dollar bills, and we could disembark.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But there was something about not being. We were delayed for ages before takeoff. They said there was fog over Spain or something like that, or some turbulent weather over. But they hadn't the money to buy the flight time or whatever you have to do. I think this was it.
Yeah, no. In fact, it's in my book actually, From Crimea with Love. We were disallowed from flying over one country's airspace. There was some dispute, and we couldn't fly direct, so we had to go around.
Yeah,
that was the case. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. That was.
I don't think they'd file a flight plan or something. It was probably great. Actually, it'd make a terrific film. The making of the bloody thing, just what we've been talking about. It's fascinating.
Yes. And they could use From Crimea with Love.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, away.
It has a book.
Yes, it's a book written by The Misadventures of an Actor on Sharpe. That's what they've said.
In fact, is it available now?
Say again?
Is it available now?
It's available to pre-order now, yes. Thank you, yes. You can pre-order now from Unbound. And if you pre-order, you get your name on a list of supporters. What more could you want?
Which I think we've all done, actually.
Here's Bertie. Let me tell you. Yeah.
The three-legged dog, yeah.
Yes, Bertie the dog. Not three-legged dog, no. But let me tell you a little story about Bertie, which also reminds me of Chris Burt. Chris Burt recently died a week or so ago.
No.
Our producer, yeah. So Sano, our lovely Portuguese hairdresser, she fell in love with this dog in Yalta Market. She went ahead and bought it. Chris was furious. She was like, "You can't take the dog on the charter. No way. So quietly, Sano behind the back, in fact, Natasha went with her to some special office where they got all the papers. And in the end, Bertie came on the plane with us to Portugal. So it's a little dog from Crimea became a Portuguese dog.
I can't believe the Chernobyl scheme of the aircraft. Who thought that was a good idea? Or is
Lovely,
that
isn't it?
just where it's rotting?
This is really sad. I know the answer to that. They used to have
you're an aviation weirdo, aren't you? Go on.
I'm afraid so. It was originally a floral motif, so that when you flew, you'd be in a garden.
I like it.
And that would have looked good in the 50s.
Sadly, by 1995, it looks a bit rotten. There's a great question here for John. Because God bless you, Chris Etchingham, I think, has not listened to enough Sharpe podcasts because he wants to know if the budget ran to giving you singing lessons for the dinner scene.
No. I've done quite a few musicals. I've done about 10 musicals. The last one being Les Miserables. So I sing, and I was a voice soprano and all that sort of stuff. So no, and I knew that song very well. So no, I didn't have singing.
Chris, dude, they couldn't even give them bacon for breakfast. What makes you think they got a singing tutor in?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we did. We had John Tams, didn't we? So we didn't really need a singing tutor.
Yeah.
Michael Holland asks, and I want to know the answer to this one, how does it feel to be the man to finally give Simerson his comeuppance?
Terrific, really. But because although he changed, Curtis changed sides because, he was, of course, he'd be pro-French and anti-British. He thought still be a little bit of that Fenian within him, so it felt very good. And the only reason he changed sides, of course, was because Napoleon crowned himself at his investiture at the ceremony in the church. So that really got Curtis's back up, and that really prompted him to change sides. But I think he would be very, very happy to get good citizens come up and see up.
Simon Williams says as well, he'd like to know, he loves the dialogue, how much of this was ad-libbed and off the cuff. It's brilliant either way, he says.
Well, I don't think any of it was ad-libbed. I mean, I think it was all scripted, wasn't it, Michael?
I think it was, yes.
Yeah, there's none of that ad-libbed, no. No, that's all scripted dialogue, yeah.
There was a scripted ad-lib at the end where I think we explained this, where they at the end Sharpe calls out the baddie, the French baddie, and it was all supposed to take place in front of the wooden fort which we had just taken. And I don't know if you guys remember, one of the security guards burned down one of the little outhouses next to the fort. Do you remember that? No.
Yes.
Your train was supposed to be delayed, and Sean said, "No way," because they were going to quickly rebuild, so they couldn't. So to cover that, when he's calling the guy, he says, "You outside now, out there where the British dead died," because the fight was supposed to stay inside the fort. So Sean just simply said, "No, outside now," to fight me. So that's why outside now.
I will ask a couple of the questions as well, because we did it for James. People have asked about other roles you've done. Felicity Gale says, I fondly remember Mr. Kavanagh from the brilliant Caught in a Free State. Which one of those two roles was the most fun to play?
Oh, by far, Curtis, certainly, yeah. Going to the Crimea, the whole experience of going to the Crimea, apart from playing the part, yeah, there's no contest there. Although Caught in the Free State is a terrific piece of work also, and it's based on true stories about the spies that lived in Ireland during what was hilariously called here, everyone else was calling it the Second World War, we called it the emergency, so I haven't figured that one out. So a lot of us, a couple of spies came here, one of them actually committed suicide. And I think they were kept in the Curragh camp, a military camp outside Dublin, in Kildare rather, but I think they were let out on weekends along with other prisoners of war to go for a pint. But no came back.
Donald West would like to know, how long did it take to put the makeup on for Vikings?
Oh, crikey. The first time, because we didn't know much about it, I mean, it took hours, about three hours maybe, 3.5 hours, but then eventually we got it down to about 50 minutes with 2 people working on it. And we just started filming again, actually, because it's been redone for Netflix. The whole story has been, it's taking place 150 years hence. Christianity has come into the Viking world, and Vikings and pagans are fighting one another. The Viking pagans and Viking Christians fighting one another. So it's become very interesting. They've also reached Nova Scotia and places like that. And so it's becoming fascinating again. But I've got a new face now, and it's a lighter material, and the face can move with it. And also I can take the eyes out during scenes, so I can walk around. Beforehand, they'd have to stay in. The whole makeup would be on for hours. I could only stay in it for about 5 hours before getting vertigo and various other things, and sensory deprivation, falling down. I always had a little fellow to guide me around the place. Now I can take the eyes out between scenes and then put them in for the scene, and then they're CGI'd. After that, they'd be CGI'd. Some sort of eyes to be put there. So it's much more pleasant experience.
Yeah, I always wondered if you could even breathe with that thing on.
No, it's very difficult. I mean, sensory deprivation. I mean, you could see the Nazis would have loved this one. They probably had it anyway for torture. But I mean, because you would find it's impossible to eat for a start, because the senses are kind of completely shut down.
Uh-huh.
But it's because you can't see and etc. But it's much better now that I can take the eyes out and stuff like that. You know. Mm.
James is starting to feel bad about moaning about being tied to a horse now.
Yeah, really. Nothing, was it?
I just figured that if that horse had fallen, I mean, Christ almighty.
Yeah.
Wow.
James, didn't Slava Berlachko do a little bit of the riding, some of it?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, there was a fall, wasn't there? That where the horse reared up and he came off, and then he carries on the journey with the flag just by foot. So yes, he did do the fall for me, as far as I remember. Yeah.
Really brutal ending, because all the stuntmen set upon you with their knives and their boots, and it was really brutal.
That's right. Exactly, kicked me to death.
But actually, it was all much more fun before you had to wear safety harnesses and things like that, particularly in the theatre. I mean, things I did when I think back on it now, the amount of injuries we got, but it was all part of the excitement, and the whole thing is about exciting an audience anyway. I can't see how you can do that without safety harness on.
No, and it certainly makes you feel alive, doesn't it? Once you're finished doing a stunt like that, or once you've done it, you go, Jesus Christ, that was exciting!
Well, I always got the stuntman to do it first, so particularly in theatre, coming in on a rope, say, out of a box in the auditorium and landing on the stage during one of the musicals, like HMS Pinafore or something like that. And get the stuntman to test the rope first. Well, defeat them down, then I'm not going to do it. But I mean, so just test your rope every night and off you go. And but it was hilarious. The injuries to prove it. Never change your flight path coming in on a rope from a box in a theatre. I did it once for the kids at a matinee. I thought I'd come in over the children's heads, not knowing that I turned backwards halfway over the auditorium and came in backwards, and then just about stopped before I hit the back wall. But I did.
Did you hit any of the children, though, coming in?
No, I didn't, no.
It's another one of those risk assessments that would have been highly amusing to fill out, I think.
Yeah, but it was much more exciting. I mean, I miss it.
The good old days.
Do you remember Tim the Doctor?
Yes, Dr. Tim. Yeah.
So let me tell you an amazing story about Dr. Tim and I. So we're sitting in the bar one night, late, in the cultural centre, late, maybe sort of 3:00 in the morning. We've had a few drinks, obviously, and maybe some other things to help us along. And suddenly a man rushes in and he says, quick, help, one of drivers just fall from balcony. And we were, what? And Tim had his medical bag with him on the floor. And we rushed downstairs, and it turned out that this man had been sitting with his back, talking to somebody, sitting on a balcony with his back to the fall, if you like. He was laughing so hard he fell off the balcony, 4 floors up, and he landed with his insteps sort of on an angle on the floor, on the dirt below, and broke both his legs. And Tim, there was quite a lot of blood, and Tim, we were drunk, I mean badly drunk. Tim cut his legs open, cut his trousers off, and there were bones sticking out of his shins. And Tim said, "Look, you just hold them in. You just hold the bones into his leg while and he found a stick, and he used the stick as a splint, and just bound the guy's legs up while an ambulance was on its way." And he said, because the guy couldn't move, he couldn't move his legs, and I think he had a back injury, obviously a terrible back injury. And Tim said to me, drunkenly, he said, "Do you think I should operate? Do you think I should go in with him and operate?" I said, "Well, if you're anything like as drunk as me, it was not probably a very sensible idea to operate on the man." He said, "No, you're probably right." And anyway, the ambulance arrived. They took the guy away, who was then paralysed, I have to say. Awful, but that was true. I think he was paralysed from then on. And Tim and I went back to the bar and we carried on drinking. And it was only when the lights started coming up in the morning that we realised how much blood there was all over us. All over my face, my chest, everything. There was blood everywhere. And then we went to work.
Amazing, James. Yeah, that incident's in my book, by the way, From Coming Here with Love.
Absolutely just amazing. I mean, the idea that you find yourself on a set somewhere pushing somebody's bones back into their legs, drunk, 3 o'clock in the morning.
It sounds a bit more realistic, like the Peninsula War then. Battlefield medicine and drunken adventures. Yeah.
And Tim was bought out, Dr. Tim was bought out solely because we had little upset stomachs from the Giardia. And that's what he was brought out to deal with, and had to deal with that in the end. Ugh.
But didn't we all get to have a good few drinks one night in the Yalta Hotel? We used to go down there when the lights came on at 5 o'clock, and we all got slightly pissed. I think Tim lost his bag, so he couldn't cure anyone, you know. and then we also pissed. I think he had to sleep outside his room because he couldn't get in. And I think somebody painted his glasses, and when he woke up, he thought he'd come to.
Okay, should we do Cocky's questions next?
Yeah,
let's do that.
Cocky.
Hello.
You ready for some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, Cocky.
Nigel Betts, apparently he gets to go first because he's Sharpe alumni. He was Pycroft in Mission. How did you like it down the mines in Hampstead?
Oh, yes. I did a play with Nigel, a thing called Wonderland, about the miners' strike in '84. And in order to do a bit of sort of background stuff, we were all taken up to, I think it was Wakefield. And we went down in a mine to see what they actually had to go through before we replicated it on stage in Hampstead. And, well, it was horrible. I mean, how people could work down there for 10, 12 hours a day as they used to, and then 8 hours a day, of course. Now, it was a particularly loathsome experience.
Richard Phillips would like to know, did you have to keep the coin in your mouth while you were being dragged up by your nose from a sofa and frog marched off?
Only every other Christmas. I don't actually remember this bit at all. I mean, who was it who asked this question?
Richard Phillips.
Well, Richard...
When Emily puts the coin in your mouth and closes your mouth with the gun.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yes. Well, presumably, yeah, unless it was a sort of jump cut to something else where I'd have taken it out. But what swallowed it, probably. I don't actually remember it at all, but so I can't really answer Richard's question.
Matthew would like to know, what was it like coming back as a character that audiences love to hate? How much fun was it?
Well, as everybody said, I mean, the whole thing about Sharpe was that it was enormously fearful and enormously amusing. And when was it James or John was saying, that or perhaps it was you, because of the lack of health and safety and all that, cobblers, life was a lot more on the edge and therefore a lot more exciting than filming is nowadays.
Drew Bale says, have you ever read Voltaire, and how did you feel about offering the book as toilet paper?
I had, well, obviously it wasn't Voltaire. It was a sort of, have I ever read Voltaire? Well, no. All I can remember about Voltaire is, I think it was William Blake. It said, mock on, Voltaire, Rousseau. You throw the sand against the wind and the wind blows it back again. That's all I really know about Voltaire.
So you had no qualms about wiping your ass theoretically on his work?
Well, theoretically, no.
Drew also wanted to know, was that your best come hither look when you were coming on to Lass?
Well,
it would have worked on me.
Well,
bear that in mind.
it did work on Emily, whatever it was.
Oh, and so famously on your last appearance, you revealed that you were a shit horseman, and that it basically dragged you around the set and you had no control over it whatsoever and were terrified. The duel scene, are you an old hand with stage fighting and swordplay? Was that any better?
Well, I'd done a bit of sword. I mean, as a child, I was playing Zorro and things, fighting with twigs with other friends of mine. I did a lot of sword fighting playing as a child, and did one or two plays where I had to sort of dabble around and a bit of this and a bit of that. But it was that chap we've seen before who told me exactly. I wasn't terrified because working with John, who I always thought was a wonderful actor, still do. And we just sort of did the moves we were supposed to do. And I mean, it was sort of, like most sword fights, what you don't want to do is injure the other guy or be injured by the other guy. But no, I had no worries about that sword fight at all. I mean, we were told to do what we did, and we did it as best we could. I was told to shut up because I was such a coward. I started sort of screaming and crying like a baby. And Tom Clegg said, "Oh, no, for fuck's sake, shut up."
Oh, no.
Remember that, John?
Yeah. Oh, no.
No.
Oh, tell him to stop.
I love this photo of you, Cocky. That outfit. Marcus is trying to replicate that outfit.
I think I need to. Yeah, the flat cap, very suave.
Yeah,
jeans.
Pulling that off, jeans and a flat cap.
Yes, well,
cigarette in hand.
But you don't look like a northerner who just needs a whip it either.
The whip is just to the left of me.
Landed gentry, I think.
Down your trousers.
And Andy Openshaw would like to know, how much do you enjoy playing foppish bad guys?
Well, there's nothing better, really, is there?
I don't think so.
I mean, to be sort of camp and evil is...
I mean, you are the ultimate foppish bad guy for me.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so, Danny.
I have such a Cocky crush, it's ridiculous. So does Marcus, though. It's not just me.
Sorry, what did you say?
Such a Cocky crush sounds very funny.
Oh,
You've got to be careful with that turn of phrase.
Yes, such a Cocky crush.
Well, you come out of it fast, you know what I mean?
Marcus has said far worse off air. We're vying for your affections, Cocky.
Now, that chap's name, he was Richard, yes?
Yes, Richard Moore. He was our military advisor.
Yeah, I remember him.
He took the chosen men through their paces a couple of weeks before we went out to the Crimea back in '92, and gradually started playing Rifleman Moore and filling in the back of the shots when they started killing the chosen men off. Yeah. He was a very good, but he was great. He knew everything, and he dressed like that. In fact, at the read through back in '92, he was dressed like that.
Yeah.
And as he left the room after he'd done the read through, I saw him what I thought was a fishing bag. It was actually a rifle bag, and he went down onto the Bakerloo line down to Warwick Avenue, dressed like that with his rifle bag. I thought, what the hell have I let myself in for here?
And I get a Christmas card, not from him, but from his his deputy chap who's
Will?
he gave my son one of the swords in the Sharpe armory very kindly, which is now somewhere about.
Will Whitlam.
Will, exactly so. Yeah.
Are you still in touch with Will?
Yes, every Christmas.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I must get his details. I must invite him on for a crew
Yes.
podcast.
Oh, well, he was. How is Richard? I mean, what's he doing now?
Yeah, I mean, this question often comes up. He's a bit of a recluse now. He doesn't want to do a podcast. He doesn't come out to reenactments. But I did see him a few times until probably 10 years after Sharpe, and then we didn't see him. But there is someone on the Grand Reenactor network who is in touch with him. So
Right.
he's okay. He was ill for a number of years, and he got divorced from Julie. Was it Julie?
Marcus knows him, don't you? Mark?
I know through him, so I do reenactment as well as the Army Reserves and stuff. And yeah, our boss has his contact details, but he's asked to be very private. He gave away all his collection recently, which was the big shame, because it went to the guy he gave it to, who's emigrated to America. And it had everything, like the colours of the South Essex Regiment, which was in Cockey's house, I think, in Sharpe's regiment. And he had he had one of Harper's Knott guns and Sean Bean's jackets. And it was just an amazing collection, like 3 or 4 cabinets. And it's all gone to someone's office in America. Amazing. Like, we thought Sean Bean had stolen stuff off set. That's nothing to write from the law. Just taking a button at a time.
Yeah, I did a war games convention in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and that guy Tim, who got it all, he had it all there. I was like, whoa! I was amazed. I'd never seen such a great collection of Sharpe stuff. Yeah.
Simon Walker would like to know, Cocky, do you think Simerson has any redeeming qualities?
None whatsoever.
No, but I made him that way.
Well, I mean, he was a gift for any actor. I mean, any actor who couldn't play him couldn't act, really.
He said, Dale asked as well, do you have, we know what Marcus's favourite line of yours is, because he does it 3-4 times a week, he quotes it. What's your favourite line or scene as Simerson?
Well, my favourite scene.
The one where you were tied down naked?
No, that wasn't my favourite. No. That was a deeply disturbing thing. In fact, I've been slightly psychotic ever since. Sean Bean, at the end of the scene, gave me I think I might have said this before.
Say it again.
But Sean Bean came after the scene, gave me a very small pebble, and said, "That is exactly what your cock looks like." You know, it was like pea shingle. It was like a very small brown pea shingle. Which, yes, I felt, well, it was rather embarrassing, but dear Michael Mallinson, who one of the best firsts I've ever worked with in my entire career, actually, Michael Mallinson, he was very good, very careful and understanding. And soon as the take was over, he used to put an umbrella over that particular piece of my equipment. Not that he obviously needed to bother. Anyway, yes, it was quite embarrassing. There's a lot of, Indian people around there looking at me as if I was a complete fool for doing this scene. I don't think I had anything to say. I just had to lie there for what seemed like hours, spread eagle, stark naked. On a very hot day.
You were tied down, spread eagle. I went back and watched them all recently, and it's no shade, just
that's it.
Very naked.
Yeah.
There's Mike Mallinson in action.
And there he is, bless him. Yes, very dear man. Liked him a lot.
Sharpe's battle.
Now married to Sarno, of course, and
yes.
in Portugal somewhere.
Yes, that's right, and still there. He came over for Muir's funeral. Last January or December, yeah. So he went back to Portugal. Yeah.
Are you in touch with Michael at all?
I was, and I went and I asked Alejandro and Stuart if he had his number, but they don't. But I'm sure I can find it. I'm going to track him down. Someone will have it, and I'll get it to you.
Well, if you ever speak to him, give him lots of love from me, because I liked him a lot. I liked him a lot more than I liked. Was it Michel Genet?
Marc Genet, yeah.
Marc Genet, who used to say, quiet please, French little French chap, with a bit of a Napoleon complex. And he used to shout, quiet, we are shitting now, we are shitting. So we always used to spend a rather long time saying, are we going to be shitting soon, Mark?
Yeah, he wasn't very nice to the locals either.
No, he didn't last very long, did he?
Lasted 2 years.
Oh, he did last a long time too.
Yeah, he did. In fact, Michael Madison replaced him.
Yes.
But he was, he was very. But he drove the schedule through, and that if you do that on Sharpe, you're God, you know. Yeah. He drove the schedule through, didn't care about niceties. We were worried that we weren't making a good show, and he said, "Listen, guys, this is not art. This is a factory. Get your shit together." And we're like, "Okay, fine."
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a way, that was good to be disabused of that. But yeah.
I love it when we get stuff like this. James Wood would like to thank you, Cocky, for helping his mum and his sister off a train at Tonbridge in the 1980s.
Well, how very sweet of him.
Do you remember it, Cocky?
No.
Of course not. Cocky does stuff like that all the time.
Yes.
Involved into his many humanitarian acts. We did get one about something else that you filmed, and I'm interested in this one because I'm a football fan. Gary Fowler is back. He says, what was it like filming Escape to Victory with such great directing, acting and footballing talents like Pele?
Well, it was a wonderful experience, and I was stuck over in Budapest for, 2 months. And I don't know how to explain this story because it's do we get out before the 9 o'clock? Anyway,
it goes out for adults only. So
well, it was I was sent out to Budapest and met the actors and the footballers. You used to have wonderful nights with Bobby Moore and Johnny Walk and Mike Summerby, who were some of the footballers. Pele, of course, I met and was a very nice chap, but I don't remember actually going out. I remember having dinner with him once, but and the actors, Tim Pigott-Smith, who was a great friend of mine at the time, and Dan Massey and all these people, and Michael Caine. I mean, they were extraordinary, wonderful. However, I sat there for about a month, and I was never called, and I couldn't understand what on earth was going on. So I emptied my the minibar nightly, really, because there was nothing else to do. And eventually I got a phone call about 5 a.m. one morning. This was literally after about 5 or 6 weeks. And a voice at the other end said, "Are you ready to work?" And I, "Yeah, sure. Well, get your ass down here, boy. We'll go on." So I did, and I went down and got into a van and went out. And they'd built this prisoner of war camp about 10 miles outside of Budapest. And I went into my Lusabago, sat there for hours, waiting to do a scene with Sly Stallone. And anyway, eventually somebody came after about 8 hours and said, "Sly's not here." I said, "Where is he?" He's gone to Paris for a fuck." I said, "Oh, fine, okay. So we won't be using you today." So I went back into the thing. This happened about 6 times. I called early in the morning, got in the bus out to the prisoner of war camp. No Sly. Where's Sly this time? He's in Berlin having a fuck. All right. and then he was in Prague having a fuck. So he'd gone around Europe having endless fucks rather than being this
You're a fucker.
Well, and after a while I was sent home. I did do the scene eventually with him, and I don't know how he managed the time really, but anyway, he did. And some months later, I got a postcard. Oh no, a big 10 by 8 with him and me in this scene, and on the back, he'd written, "Lovely to work with you. Do you box? Love, Sly." Now I thought this was a total joke, box me with him. I mean, he was about 3'8" and tall and 4'8" wide, and that was just his arm. And I couldn't see myself actually in a ring with Sly Stallone, and I assumed it was a joke from somebody on the set. But then, of course, all these Rocky films came out, and I thought, well, I should have bulked up a bit because these go on forever. As my son said with the boxing match, he said, "Never bet on the white guy," and which I've always thought was rather a good phrase. And so that was my experience of working with Sly. Max von Sydow, I did enjoy very much. We had several dinners together. Not really, we said, but I did like Max very much. In fact, I liked everybody. I wasn't terribly keen on Freddie Field, who was the producer, who, when I introduced some actor to him, he said, "I know who the hell this actor is. I employed him." And I thought, well, sorry. One of those difficult times with the producer.
It's a nasty what?
Yeah.
I love it. Already, halfway through that anecdote, I was already messaging our cartoonist asking him to do a Cocky versus Sly Stallone Rocky cartoon.
Oh, because the end of the story is of the Budapest thing was that I learnt when I got back to England eventually after about two months that the English casting director the American casting director hadn't told the English casting director that my part was cut. And although I'm building, I've seen the film once and I wasn't in it. But I remember spending quite a long one day, a whole day, crawling on my stomach, trying to escape from the prisoner of war camp. But it never appeared in the film. But there I am, because people say, "What did you play in that?" Because I saw your name in it. And I said, I played a chap called Farrell, I think his name was. But he didn't appear.
Are you ready, Hugh?
Yes, I'm ready.
Are you? I do wonder what goes through people's minds sometimes when they send questions in. Margaret Brown, bit of a saucy question, and apologies if it's been asked before. But as a broad Scotsman, what were you wearing under your kilt as Munro?
Do you know, I've no recollection whatsoever, but I definitely had something under there, didn't I, Cocky?
Well, I didn't know.
I remember being so pissed with you one night in the altar. Terrible, unbelievable. Anyway, sorry, just kind of reminiscing. No, I think I probably just had a pair of, I don't know what sort of, I don't know. Yeah.
It'd be funny if we say like the old tighty whities, like
the old Y fronts, the Munro Y front.
Something completely unalluring.
And very unalluring. Very, very unalluring. Long before Calvin Klein's.
But please do reminisce about being drunk with Cocky, because people love it.
No. I can see the room actually. I don't know. I can't remember quite. We were rolling around and laughing hysterically. Anyway, I haven't seen him, Cocky, for ages either. It's awfully nice this meeting all your old friends.
Isn't it just?
Yes, it's great.
Yeah.
Hugh, do you have that? Was it bottle that you sent me the picture of?
Yes. No, I didn't. No, I haven't got it here actually. No, I haven't. I sent Mark. I found Monroe's finest rum or whiskey or whatever it was. I sent it to Marcus because we've become friends on social media.
Modern way, yes. It was a really nice image. It looks period authentic, but someone's put your name and his name and all that.
I know. I should have brought it.
Really nice.
Yeah.
I always like to know what people have borrowed from sets.
Yeah.
Actually, John hasn't been on. John, you haven't been on before. Did you take anything home from filming?
No, from Sharpe?
Yes.
No. The only thing I have. No, I don't. I have my sword from Alexandra.
Right.
I have two prosthetic faces from Vikings. That's about it. No, no, I don't take. And I don't have any mementos except for those. Yeah.
It's very honourable of you.
No.
Matt, you had a question for Hugh.
I did. There's the hat game in Sharpe Sword is fantastic. Everyone's got fantastic hats. And as someone who cannot wear a hat, I'm always jealous. But you end up with that great big white Stetson-y sort of thing.
Yes.
At the end, which James was wearing at the beginning of it. So is there a scene that was cut where he lost a bet and had to give you his nice hat?
I don't think so. No, there was an awful lot of fuss about hats because I had in gold I have a huge hat, which was constantly, people were saying, we can't see your face, we can't see, and get another hat for Monroe, blah, blah, blah. I don't know I honestly can't remember, Matt, I'm sorry.
Peter wanted to know, where did the Great Dane come from and what happened?
It's Great Dane belonged to Berkeley, Stephen Moore. Remember, there was a Great Dane.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Now I figure where did they come from? Because Clive Francis had them in Sharpe's company, so they were being. It was a repeat of those dogs. I think the same one, but it was only one. But it probably was the people who got the horses. Someone like that. So they were acting dogs.
Well, that's one of the problems with Sharpe, with the internal bits rumbling underneath that you don't see on screen, is that the Colonel changes every episode pretty much, apart from Cocky coming back, but not as the Colonel. And actually, the commanding officer in the book stays the same for a long time. You've got people like Lawford, and who he stays as I think the Major. He's the Grenadier Company Commander, and then he's the Major, and then eventually ends up as the Colonel. And he's in loads of episodes, but because of, I presume, script reasons, let's be nice, they get written out. So we should actually see lots of people from Eagle and Company come back time and time again. And in Swords, definitely should have some of those old faces from the first and second series. Yeah.
Shortly after Martin Jacobs, he played Lawford. Martin Jacobs. Remember Cocky? Martin
Jacobs, I remember him, yeah.
Yeah.
He moved to Australia not long after.
Okay.
So I figured they didn't want to pay the airfare to bring him back.
No.
I figure because Lawford is.
I said Lawford is Colonel. It's Leroy, so I'm going to get it wrong.
But Leroy also is in all the books. Yeah, he's
in all the books, and in fact he dies.
He dies in honour.
He dies
in honour. Or sword, yes. Sword, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I figured Lawford was last back.
It would have been a big one for him.
It would have been brilliant, yeah. Because he teaches Sharpe to read. That's the story in Eagle.
That's Lawford.
Yeah, Lawford.
That's Lawford. Yes.
Yeah. So
Lawford keeps coming back, and Leroy keeps coming back, and Hogan keeps coming back. It's all a bit strange.
Natasha wanted me to remind Cocky, we were listening to a Poirot the other day on the radio. It was an old Poirot where you were playing something, but he came up with I've had enough of this absurd fandango. And we were just increases all day long.
Oh, that needs to be can you do that line? And I'm going to make it my text message alert.
Do you give it to me again?
Yes, so I've had enough of this absurd fandango.
I've had enough of this absurd fandango.
You know what? If we're doing text alert, you must do a Horse Guards quote for Marcus.
I have friends at Horse Guards, huh?
Outstanding.
Wellington just explodes at you.
All of us have text message alerts now. Hugh, how many times in the last 20 odd years have you been asked about the bloody bagpipes?
Oh, crumbs, masses of times. Lots and lots and lots of times. Always did you actually play them, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, no, I've never knew anything about them whatsoever. Really. It was all just, I don't know who taught me to do it, actually, even to make an attempt at doing it.
Well, the guy Bob White. Do you remember
Bob
White?
That rings a bell.
Find a picture of him. Yeah, so he was the one that dubbed over, whatever you're playing, he's the one playing.
That's right. Yes.
And in fact, I remember coming home one day and he was practicing. I was like, what the hell is this?
Yes.
So, here we go.
He was a nice chap. I remember him doing great.
He was really nice, yeah.
Did you we've talked obviously about James being tied to a horse and about Cocky being tied down with his tackle out. What was your most undignified moment on Sharpe?
Well, the thing about it, I'm not sure, I was going to send Jason a photograph. I was so revolted, but when I was ill and had shingles and the doctors all came, this was not being shot, but the doctors all came with chef's hats on and rubbed embrocation into this thing, making it much worse in the end. And I mean, I can remember being in that room in the sanatorium, just one wanted to die. That was and then having to shoot a big long night scene with El Casco, whatever it's called, the coming up very soon afterwards. Most undignified.
That's your room, Hugh. That's your room.
Yes, gorgeous, isn't it? That was in the altar. That one actually.
Yes. That's right. That you had the problem back in Simferopol. Yeah.
Everton Simferopol.
That looks like the height of 50s decor there.
That was luxury by comparison with the other one. This one here in Yalta. No, so undignified. No.
It's hard to top Cockies, isn't it?
It is very hard to top Cockies.
Unfortunately. So we talked about other people's sort of other things they've done in their career where questions came in. And I got the shock of my life the other day. You were in Train Spotting.
I was, yes. Yeah. Yes, I mean, you say that to people and their mouths fall open and say, what was the scene in your time? It's only a short scene. In fact, there were 2 scenes, but one of them was cut. Yeah. That and Bronson. People always go on about Bronson, which I was in too, which I played a very odd character who was described in the text as being a cross between an East End gangster and Noel Coward. Was rather a challenge.
I think we should ask Jason some questions because Jason, this one, you had quite a big role in this one.
They do say that, yes. I mean, I save Sharpe's ass. I save the whole army's ass. I break the code. I win the war, basically.
Is this mentioned in your book, Jason?
It is mentioned in my book.
Yeah.
And in fact, this was the year where I got a much bigger part, and they said, "Yeah, we're not giving you any extra money, and we'll get someone else if you don't want to accept." Thank you.
Did they ask you to be like the Harris intellectual? Or did you kind of start to suggest it going? Because I can't remember Dan Hagman, John Tams in this episode. He's like just in the background. He doesn't like speak. But you've got quite a nice role.
I did. They had to have a certain quotient of chosen men, and they were way over with me. So I thought, well, we better knock John Tams down. There was also John. John was quite ill as well, so he did miss a bit of filming. In the background and stuff. But yeah, I was so lucky. I was really happy. I had a part in the narrative, which Chosen Men never really did. Had good scenes. I had good scenes with Sean, which was a lot of fun to do because, we in fact, we even rehearsed our scenes, which I'd never done before. Sean and I would go down the bar, have a drink, rehearse our scene. And you can see on screen because it's really natural and lovely. Of course, we had the camaraderie, but it was so great to be doing those kind of scenes. But as you said, it came at the expense of other chosen men. I would prefer Lyndon and Cooper to be there, and we all have a little bit of action. So
by this point, Lyndon Perkins is being killed off. Cooper's left. Tongue's left. So I guess there's only you and John, and then Dara as the chosen men. But yeah, you suddenly actually appear, and you're doing something a bit more unusual. I think, like in Mission, there's a really nice bit where you're left back, so you miss all the fighting, but
Mission was later.
You get a bit more fleshed out, so a bit more Harris.
Yeah. Because the lineup scene in Sharpe's rifles, where in front of those big rocks and Sharpe. So what can you do, Harris? I can read, sir, a quarter to my Lord Bacchus, etc., etc. So John Tams wrote that scene because they were short. I know we've mentioned this in other podcasts. John Tams wrote that scene, so basically he wrote my history, and I did have a choice because I didn't really know. I knew that the real Rifleman Harris couldn't read or write, so he wasn't an educated man. So I had the choice whether to talk Harris like this, like, Cooper and Tongue were doing, or the way I did it, and I chose the other way. So it sort of fit in with the way John had written it. So no, it evolved like that. If this guy Harris is responsible for a book, then he must be clever. So that's
because I don't know if you know that I've actually got quite a bit of shared things with Harris, which I really like. So he was born just over the hill from where I was born. One of his barracks was in Portsmouth, which was my last regiment's barracks. And then he goes to hospital for his malaria where I was born. So I've always quite liked the real Harris as well. The links. I mean, I don't have the Dorset accent, the Tratter, but yeah, that's why I imagine he'd have a bit more Tratter going on and a bit more Shider. That's my best. I'm just insulted everyone from my hometown. Brilliant.
Are you a bit of an actor manqué, Marcus? Is there a little actor lurking in there?
I don't think so.
He's one of so he's a reenactor, which everyone else, and
what is that? What happens?
They're dressy up people. They like to. They don't like being called that, but so they.
I'm a bit disparaging. Yeah, it's a costume, not a uniform to me.
And where do you do it?
We're normally in the summer in fields in England, and we recreate Napoleonic style battles.
Okay.
All summer long.
Jason and you guys wore, but
yeah, all summer long here they
have
battle.
going out talking about history and. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge social element, and they're great guys. I'm with the 95th Rifles, so there's a big link to Jason and Sharpe. But yeah, to me, it's then bringing the history alive and talking to people about history, and then they can imagine it because they can smell what a musket smells like, and they can see a band playing, and they can, there's the French, there's the British. It's there in front of you. You don't need the imagination, so it's great.
Oh, great.
They are quite funny when you go to big fairs though, and you get so you'll get at Detling a pitch of Vikings sitting next to a pitch of Easy Company from World War II, both fiercely refusing to break character. Despite pretend. And the best one I ever saw was a reenactment of the Battle of Hastings at Detling, and it was basically the only two guys invested in it were William and Harold. And it was two middle-aged men screaming at each other in the middle of a rainy field. They had one guy on a horse that was supposed to be the cavalry, and everybody in the infantry looked like it was their families that had been recruited against their will to be in it. And they all had early learning centre weapons, and they played the Gladiator battle theme music for 20 minutes, screamed at each other, and then some child got hit by a wooden javelin and cried, and that was the end of the Battle of Hastings. So they're very polarised. There's very different setups, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
And Alex describes it quite well, actually, because I remember sitting there and you see Vikings and then hoplites and then Civil War, and then suddenly there's the Viet Cong stroll by, and it's like, what?
And then in the corner, because nobody really wants them on view, but you can't tell them they're not allowed to play, are all the weirdos that like to dress up in Nazi stuff. Usually well away from the beaten path so that you don't walk past them. You just put all the Nazis in the corner and let them get on with their own weirdo.
Yeah, it gets a bit, people do turn up with swastikas and stuff, and you sometimes worry about
it's
that.
just costume, and you're like, well, if we put you over there away from the general public, and they probably won't walk up that end of the field, so then nobody will be offended by you. But there was the out.
I'll just say, because I've worked in museums all my life, pretty much since work experience days to today. It's a great educational tool, and these people, they do their own research, they go and find, some of these people, they've gone into archives and find stuff about the uniforms of the Napoleonic period that had been lost, and it slightly redresses things, and they go, it's actually 2 buttons, not 4, and there's this design of button that we thought they never had, and it's over there. And you think, actually that doesn't matter that much. But all of a sudden it's making things more accurate, and it's helping the overall picture, and some people will take it very seriously. I know some people will camp out authentically, and some people, like myself, it's a lovely social thing of like-minded people who like history, who like having a beer, and like to run around and fire.
The last time I was at Detling, I was sat with the Easy Company's guys, and they were eating Pringles out of a tube and watching Chelsea Burnley on my phone.
I've always got Haribo on me. It's quite easy.
Jason, we've got a couple more questions for you.
Yes.
I quite like this question. Bjarke Fraser says, how much of yourself do you bring to the role of Harris? Did growing up as an Englishman in America help provide you with a sense of being an outsider that Harris brings with him?
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of thought about that. I guess I am a bit of an outsider because I didn't grow up I didn't go to drama school in England. I didn't go through that whole English thing, and I sort of landed here. But I kind of felt like I was not an outsider amongst the chosen men. So I never felt that I was playing separate from those guys. But yes, I knew I was freakish looking, my red hair's flowing out over the place. I like to think I was a super soldier, not just an intellectual, because I'd like to think I was as good a fighter as Sharpe, but way cleverer. So I guess there is a lot of me in there. Yeah, there is a lot of me.
And David Bramfield, actually, you just raised a point there. So they're whittling away the chosen men at this point. The first instalment of Sharpe after battle with no Lyndon. How much did you miss him?
Enormously. But I will say that when Lyndon left at the end of Sharpe's battle, remember I said that Natasha and I went upstairs to our room and we did a pregnancy test. Yes. We discovered we're about to become parents. So that was on my mind, basically, more than missing Lyndon, I must say. But yeah, I did. But with Sword, I had a lot to do. I had scenes, lines to remember, big stretches, to be on the case. So I did have a lot on my mind to not have to worry about Lyndon. But yeah, of course I missed him, absolutely. And it became more acute when we got to Turkey the following year, because I was just left wandering around on my own, instead of getting up to mischief with Lyndon.
Everything else that came in question-wise for you is about what David Safri refers to as the Candide bum wipe scene. Cocky has no qualms about potentially wiping his backside on Voltaire. Had you read Voltaire, and how funny did you find it?
Yes, I did read Voltaire. I read Candide, the book we're talking about, Candide. My father is a writer, author, and I grew up surrounded by books. Every single space on the wall was taken with bookshelves. So I'm horrified at the fact that you would wipe your ass on a copy of any book. And I was equally horrified, and I was a bit miffed at the screenwriters because so Candide is used as the code that the baddie is using to communicate back and forth. And Harris finds a copy of Candide put underneath the dead Frenchman, and it's supposed to be covered in blood. So, and then later on in a scene where we're in a campfire, Harris has this shredded version of the book, which was perfectly fine before, and he's burning it. And I'm thinking, that's ridiculous. Harris wouldn't burn a book. The book is still readable. He wouldn't burn it. Ridiculous.
I was just going to ask about when you read that script for the first time, because with Lyndon, they started to flesh out the character and then they killed him off. So with this being, I think, the last episode of this series, were you worried when you started to read this that they're giving you more and more lines? Shit, they're going to kill me off in a minute.
I think that because all those other guys, they die in the books, Cooper and those guys, they die. So I knew that there was no death scheduled for him. I knew that Hagman was going to get a bullet in the lungs on page 232 of Waterloo. I knew that was coming, but there was no death of Harris. And I thought, can they kill us all off? No. But I knew that there was going to be less chosen men, because the next episode is Sharpe's Regiment, where he fucks off back to England, and there's like a tiny bit of chosen men at the beginning and end. So I didn't think this was the end. I mean, I suspected one of us would die, but I thought, it's going to come soon, and we're 2 years away from the end of the books anyway. So no, I didn't feel threatened. I felt emboldened. I thought, if this is good, then they can't really get rid of me, because it's useful to have a clever chosen man.
Did you have any sense of why they were whittling you down? Was it just kind of have that attritional effect of war, or was it because they wanted to make more of certain characters within the storyline?
I think it was a lucky coincidence. But as I said, as the books progress through the canon, the chosen men are less in there. And as I said, there is a death of Tongue, there's a death of Cooper. In fact, way early in the books. So it was a little happy accident, because on the first year, Paul Trussell got a job on a Mike Leigh movie played. It was going to be a movie. So he got that job offer before the Sharpe got the green light for the second year. So he accepted that offer. Okay. So that just happened. They thought, oh, great. So they just divided up his lines and divided up the money and sort of gave us a little bit. So, and then on the third year, Michael Mears said, listen, I only want to do one episode this year. Can I do one episode and possibly come back later on? So that was another happy accident. So why they felt they had to kill Lyndon, I don't know. So it was a bit of an accident that we lost the first two. So I didn't necessarily feel there was a cull going on, although, that's exactly what was going on. So no, I didn't feel I was going to die soon. We were causing a bit of trouble in terms of industrial action, offset with water riots and bacon riots. So I did think, they might want to get rid of me that way. But no, as far as character-wise, I thought Harris was okay. He was quite safe.
We've had questions for people about other things in their careers, and we have got one for you as well. What was it like working with Hugh Grant on About a Boy?
It was great fun. He's a really cool dude, actually. And this is in my book, From Crimea with Love, by the way.
What?
Shortly after the second year, available from Unbound, pre-ordering right now.
When does it come out?
Sorry?
When does it come out?
It comes out on July the 9th. But you can... 7th. But you can pre-order now.
How can you get it wrong?
So after the second Sharpe, Company Enemy Honor, I get a call from Liz Hurley. Now we had been in touch, because But if you get Liz Hurley's number, you call her, don't you?
Yeah, being a man, you took every opportunity to stay in touch with Liz Hurley. It's not
absolutely, definitely. Anyway, so she calls me out the blue and says, Jason, Hugh's playing football and he needs someone to play. And I was like, absolutely. So I went round to their place in Fulham and I had tea and breakfast and stuff. And Hugh and I went off to play. He was playing for Penguin Books and we were playing the V&A. And I ended up in goal because, that's where you put, it was good because I'd spent 4 months on Sharpe. So I really needed the Betty Ford clinic rather than playing a hefty game of football. And so I remember towards the end of the match, Hugh felled one of the V&A people in the box and it was a penalty. And I said, don't worry, Hugh, I've got this, man. No worry. Sorted. Penalty came in. I dived across, got one hand to it. I thought I'd saved it, but it actually bounced into the net. So I was like, jumping up and down. And Hugh said, no, JC, winners arm. So I had a really nice relationship with Hugh already. So by the time we got to About a Boy, it was my second helping of hanging out with Hugh. So he's really cool, really great, and not at all like the foppish effete image he has. I guess he shed that image now, but he was great. He was brilliant. I loved working with him.
Guys, any more anecdotes about filming that you want to share for Sharpe Sword?
Oh yes, John. So you don't, John Kavanagh. So Sharpe gets cured on the Mirador with this icy water that you suggest that you've seen somewhere. You saw somewhere. Where you see it? You see it somewhere in action somewhere. Anyway, on a ship.
He's in the Navy. He's fighting.
Navy, yes.
He's fighting the British at Trafalgar.
That's right.
So the water source was actually down on the lower balcony, and they rigged up this sort of Napoleonic pulley system. But every time the thing got pulled up, the whole bucket ended up on top of you and John's hands.
Yeah, good Lord, yeah. That's amazing.
Beautiful scene, and it was amazing going to Portugal after being in the Crimea. Of course, I mean the food and the sunshine. So it was quite a schizophrenic episode. Sharpe Sword.
Yes, I remember going up to Sintra with who's the horsemaster? Roy Street, wasn't it?
Street.
Roy,
yeah.
He's not with us either, is he?
No, he's not with us now.
He's a great guy. He did some good fun, and he had some good fun there too. Some great anecdotes that he could have told.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then adventures in the Crimea.
Definitely, yeah. We had. I remember one time we had to pull him.
On balcony. I think what he did was really unfortunate, that fellow, but he was trying to traverse the one balcony to another across the little barrier thing, and somebody had gotten sick on the other side of the thing, and he slipped on the vomit and down he went. But I was wondering why we saw so many people out there with kind of makeshift crutches and things like that, because they tend just to chop your. If you have any sort of leg injuries, they just take them off, I think.
But you're not confusing the Irish mission where we actually had real amputees, because the Irish mission that Father Curtis runs.
I remember that. Yeah. But I saw people in the street, lost them in the street. Some of the saddest thing I've never seen poverty quite like it. I mean, there was a guy, I used to pass him every day on the way down to Yalta, and he was selling 2 pot scrubs. Another fellow with a bathroom scales would sell you could get yourself weighed for a couple of, whatever it was, kopecks. Amazing.
Yeah. I've got a lovely picture of a babushka in the Yalta market, the bazaar, and she has an upturned cardboard box, and there's like 2 dried fish, a pack of cigarettes, and a bottle of Pepsi Cola. That was the entire stock. Yeah, it's pretty sad, but it's gotten a lot better. It's a gangster's paradise now.
Natasha, come out. We're finishing now anyway. Come on.
Say hello. Yes, come on, Natasha. Come on, say hello.
Natasha's crew.
Oh.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you all. I love those podcasts. And John, I remember you looked so amazing in your costume. It was so and your sword fights were always like a dance almost because of this. What would you call the priest?
Cassock.
Yeah, cassock.
I don't know cassock, and it was always all in black against this beautiful, mountains or it was just so beautiful. I remember being mesmerized. That's my memory.
I was an altar boy, so I was used to wearing soutanes and stuff like that, you know, and when it was the days of the Latin Mass, that ages me now.
Or it very gracefully and properly.
No, it's a wonderful experience. We were just saying, just recalling all that. It's got very vivid memories, you know, it's wonderful. I mean, it's amazing. I'd have to go back to the Crimea. I actually loved the Crimea. I quite liked it, you know, I really did. We returned a few times, 2000, 2004, 2007, 2011. But then when the whole thing kicked off, we said, no way, I'll go back again.
Technical question, Zack, why is your picture so much clearer and your sound so much better than anybody else's?
I have no clue, to be honest with you. I'd like to say that I'm just wonderful like that, but I'd be lying to you.
You were just saying, no. I just thought maybe being some sort of nerd was a skill that...
No, ironically, Zach's on like an 18-year-old laptop, and usually his is the worst sound of all. So it just must be some freak atmospheric
it must be
conditions today. Guys, thank you so much for reliving Sharpe Sword with us. Cocky, Hugh, John, and of course James. It's been fantastic.
It's been a real pleasure. What a charming, lovely way to spend an hour and a half. Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
Lovely to see you again, James. And I've got to say, I think the bravest thing I've ever seen any actor do on that horse.
Bless you.
All the people behind you were all thinking, fuck, thank God we're not doing that. I wanted to tell you that. I've never seen you since.
That's so lovely. Thank you, Cocky. Hugh, all of you, John, everyone. It would be such a lovely way to spend an hour and a half. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Lots of love
for having us. Lovely to see everybody.
Lovely to see you all.
Thanks, guys.
Lovely to see you all.
And you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.